All right. So this episode is about low ice. And what I mean by ice is basically your ability to handle yourself, to perform well, to do the things that you have to do under stress. And what I've discovered over lots of experiences over the years is that I always thought I was one of those people that, maybe I'm not the strongest, maybe I'm not the best at something, but I got the ice. Like, I have the clutch factor. If I'm under pressure, I'm gonna deliver and I'm gonna be insane, something like that. And I always like to think of myself as that kind of person, like not as the cocky mother trucker who could do everything, but the person who, when he needs to be reliable in the clutch situations, in the high pressure, high stress situations, when people need things to be done, you can rely on him. I don't think that's me. Just learning a lot more about myself. I always thought that was true, but after many different situations across different kinds of contexts, so through academic contexts, through gaming contexts, and through general life contexts, I've discovered I have low ice. I just don't have that ice, that clutch factor, right? So how does that manifest? So let's start with probably the best part for myself, where I think I at least have some ice, if not that much. Academics, well, my parents really put a strong emphasis on academics growing up, right? As I've probably talked about many times. And I think just through the repeated amounts of times that I had to do certain things, repetition is key always with developing a strong skill set and strong familiarity with things that you do. And I think that's why academics really is one of my strongest parts of myself in my overall life. Compared to a lot of other things that I do, academics is something that generally above the average in. And even in high stress situations, I can generally have a good enough outcome. So how do these things manifest? Some examples of academic stress that I've had, one of them is just having big tests, right? And early on, when I was still at home with my parents and I went to Chinese school, when I was in middle school and high school, I had a lot more agency and autonomy in high school, but even in middle school and throughout going to Chinese school, the way that I built up any kind of ice and clutch factor and ability really when just doing academic tests was repetition. My parents made me study things over and over again. Like when I was preparing for weekly quizzes and big exams for Chinese school, my mom would always make me do exercises over and over again. She'd meticulously really write out these kinds of worksheets or mini mock exams that I do. And it actually really helped me in preparing myself when I actually took the quiz or the exam, because I'd basically already done it the night before over and over again. So come the actual event, I was really well versed and I just could easily recite all my answers, write them all down, and it was just easy to do. And in that way, in that kind of stressful situation where oftentimes people, struggle on tests, and I can say that I still suffer from this later on when I didn't develop as much repetition. I certainly still struggle on tests. But earlier on when I was doing this kind of practice, and even now, I think I have developed the habits necessary so that when I'm in these kinds of academic test situations, it's actually okay. I think I have at least medium ice where I'm able to generally do well. Now, there are exceptions. There was that one time where I got 32 points out of 100 on a test, which was my worst grade I've ever gotten in an exam. And that was like a true no ice situation because that was quite terrible. And so that's happened before. But I think they're more of exceptions because the general average, I've done well enough. I think one thing that I really excelled in with the academic stuff was presentations. And again, the reason why I even had any ability in ICE in this field was because of lots of practice. So for Chinese school, every year we had this thing that was basically you had to tell a story, usually a classic like folktale story in Chinese. And you had to say it in front of an audience of people with like a panel of judges, you could say. And basically you had to memorize the story and tell it back to them. And this was often a very stressful thing for all the students in the class because, you know, nobody likes just going up to the front of a room in front of a bunch of people and trying to speak stuff from memory. And as I've said in a previous episode before, memory is fallible. And I've had my own situations where my memory just bail on me and I'm just left stranded, flailing around in front of everybody, trying to recover where I was. Luckily, while that did happen with piano, it didn't happen in the academic context with Chinese because I really, again, just like the exams, my mom made me practice over and over again where I'd just stand in front of her and I'd be reciting the whole story. And then when she's like cooking, I'd just be like standing to the side and reciting the story to her. And then late at night, I'd do it one more time. Basically, a lot of repetitions. And in that sense, I'm building the muscle memory, but this time with my mouth instead of my fingers in reciting this. So when it actually came down to these story recitation times assignments that we had, I generally did quite well. Like I was often the best in my class. Like we didn't have a big class, but I generally was the best because I think my mom definitely did make me spend the most time out of everybody else. But in that way, the time spent practicing translate to a better result in the actual final result, in the actual final event. So academics wise, not the best, but not the worst. You could say I do have some ice, but ice often, I would say, involves some kind of stressor where it's not just, something that you know about. Ice often comes from something that is unexpected and is how you can adapt to that situation, right? And then these kinds of examples that I've given, these are not unexpected things. These are set events that you know ahead of time when they're coming, so you can spend all that time preparing for it. And that is actually where basically all my success came from in those events. I knew about it beforehand, and I spent the time, willingly or not, whether it was from external pressures or not, to spend the time and the effort to prepare for them. So then when the actual events came, I would do well. Now, the part academically where you could say I don't have this ice, and this is why I kind of wanted to make this video, because I think this really exemplified how I really have low ice. So as I said, ice revolves around the unexpected, and in the academic sense, I would equate this with your stress tolerance, how you can deal with the stress of having a lot of things coming down on you. And in some ways, I think I'm good at it, but in other ways, I think I'm bad. So let's start with the good. I've had plenty of times throughout this college career where I've had so many assignments from different classes, so many projects, everything lining up within the same week, a lot of pressure, a lot like big weighted assignments, stuff that could really impact my grade, all coming together in a few select days, like all around each other. So there's a lot of stress on me to deliver and complete these within a timely manner. And I think my previous examples and my previous experiences in knowing how to work and prepare for things helped me in this regard. So in terms of actual completion and the final effects, so basically the final end products of being able to complete all these assignments on time and complete everything I need to do despite having a lot of work and all the time pressure, I think I have ice. I think I can do that, and I think I have done that. The part where I don't have ice, where I have very low ice in fact, is actually letting that stress tolerance not affect me, and not affect me in a negative way, and not affect me also in showing it externally to others. Because I think that is one of the biggest things with ice. Really, all the previous things I've said before, that's not really ice. That's having ability, having the skills to actually complete stuff. It's maybe more akin to responsibility than ice or stress tolerance. Stress tolerance, I feel like, is more of being able to keep your external face, your external image of being unbothered and unpressured by whatever stress is onto you. And besides just externally, also internally, making sure that you have your plan to deal with this stress and you don't let it overtake your life. So recently, I had an example, an event, an assignment where it really showed I don't have this ice. So I had this very large compilers project. So compilers, all you need to know is it's a class, and it's a quite tough class, and the assignments, they spend a lot of time. And in this class, the assignments are group assignments, more specifically pair assignments. So it's me and another person working on this assignment. Now, the context for this particular one that I was working on, this particular event that happened this past few days, was I had done most of the work for the assignment at first. Like the first half, when the assignment released to the end, I had done most of the work in the first half. And then I had basically handed off the rest of the assignment to my partner to be able to complete the rest, right? Now, the issue was partly because my partner was very busy, so he had to start actually working on his part a little later than I wanted. Partly because we didn't divide up the work very evenly as well. I kind of underestimated the amount of stuff that he'd have to do. And despite me having time in that later half where I could have picked up some of the slack, I didn't actually. And I let him do what we decided on. So that's a second factor as well. Basically, those two factors made it so that he took almost 5 to 6 days after the deadline before we finally completed it. And throughout this time, I let it get to me so hard. I didn't have the ice to manage the stress and keep it from coming through and leaking through into other parts of my life and also externally so that other people wouldn't know about this. So the circumstances that happened was 1 or 2 days after the deadline, basically starting from the third day after the deadline, I went on a vacation because this was during the spring break time. So when I went on the vacation, he was still working on this assignment, which meant we still weren't done. So as I started on with this vacation, I was still stressing with him about when we were going to finish this assignment and how close we were to finishing the assignment. Now, starting off on the first few days, I was handling it better in the sense that I wasn't letting it completely get to me. I was like constantly, I think at least I was handling it better externally. Internally, I was still very much stressed and letting it take up large parts of my mind when I really should have been able to partition and in a way compartmentalize, right? Have that be one part of my life and be able to focus my mind upon the spring break, the vacation that I was on, and actually relax. But I couldn't do that because I kept letting it affect how I was thinking. I kept letting it affect basically my stress levels during the vacation. So I wasn't able to fully relax because I kept thinking about and communicating with him. I was like, are you going to finish? How close are you to finishing? What can I do to help? And it was just on and on, this constant communication with my partner. And I wasn't able to put my mind at ease. Now, even with this is a component of ICE, but I think one of the main components, as I said before, is the external facing factor. If you're even internally still very stressed and worried about this kind of stuff, and it's taking your mind off of something else that you're supposed to be doing, if you can display your external image to other people so that they can't even tell that you're going through this, that they think everything is all right, and they think that you're fully engaged, committed, and focused on whatever it is you're supposed to be doing instead, what you're showing them that you're doing, I think that is the definition of ICE. And this was the part where I always thought I was good, and I really overinflate my own sense of ability in this regard, because it's really easy to think, oh, if I was really focused, I can make sure that I will never show anything to other people, right? They'll never know that I'm actually going through a tough time. They won't know that I'm struggling with this certain thing that I'm struggling with. And I think I can do that. But the thing is, you have to have full focus, and you have to be consciously thinking, okay, I'm going to mask my behavior so that I don't show this kind of stuff, so that people won't have an idea. The thing is, oftentimes these stress things, they aren't just little things that happen, within a day, a couple hours. Oftentimes, I mean, it's all very relative, but oftentimes, it could last a couple hours, could last a couple days. And the difficult part of being able to maintain this external image, which I think I can do, is that you have to always fully be conscious of it and be doing it when you're around other people, right? But over such a long extended period of time, over many hours, over many days, it's hard to keep remembering to do this. So then your unconscious external image becomes reflective of your internal state. And if your internal state is stressing, which I was stressing, and I was really worried and afraid that we weren't going to be able to turn this in on time because we had to use so many late days. We had to email the professor too about getting another extension. If your internal state is so jumbled and so stressed, it's going to be so difficult to consciously display something else that isn't your internal state to other people for such a long extended period of time. And that's what happened to me. Slowly over those 3 days of the vacation, where I started out better, but slowly I got worse and worse in actually hiding my stress. And that's the thing. I got worse at hiding the stress, which then gave other people the impression that, oh man, they then have this, I guess you could say, impression of you, but it's more of like they want to help you and they want to give you the time needed to resolve your stress. But in a way, when you're displaying the stress and you're all focused on doing something else, you're now taking away from the experience of other people because they're having fun. The other people are supposed to be having fun. We're all supposed to be focused on doing this one thing. But now I'm displaying these signs of stress and I'm showing that I'm not fully engaged in this because I'm thinking about something else. And if you have ICE, you're able to separate that. You're able to have that distinction. You're able to maintain it. And that's the part that I'm not able to do. It's very difficult to do. That's the main part where I think I have low ICE. Other things in relation with ICE. I think another thing, an example, a field that I said where ICE is also relevant is basically the clutch factor. And that often comes into play with sports or with sports or gaming. And one thing was throughout high school, I played on my high school's tennis team. And as I said, throughout this whole time, basically up to now, when I've really had a more introspective look and be able to think about my own abilities. I always thought I was like icy in the sense that I can really do things, and I could be clutch in the high pressure situations where it's down to the wire and other people might let their nerves get to them. I could be clutch. And I think playing tennis matches where matches get really close and is down to the wire on specific points in games, I've also found out that I'm not. I have low ice. Sometimes I have the ice and I'm able to clutch up, but a lot of the times when I thought that I could control my nerves and I wouldn't be the one to crack, I wouldn't be the one under pressure to wilt and give in and make mistakes, that was often me in those tennis matches. And I remember there was this one time I played this one match against another player on another team, and I won the first set. So in tennis, you play a best of 3 sets, where sets are first 6 games. So basically, I won the first set, which is step 1, and I just had to win one more to win. And then I was leading in the second set, and eventually he started gaining momentum where he won 1 or 2 games in a row. And then it got into my head so much that I was like, I gotta stop this. I gotta clutch up. I can't be letting this guy do this to me. And despite me telling myself I can do this, I can clutch up, just the fact that I'm even telling myself this, I just didn't have the ice. I was psyching myself out and saying I could do things, but the fact that I was thinking so much about it instead of just playing my own game and thinking about, oh, this is just another game, and if I just play how I was playing in the first set, I would have just won. Instead, I let it get to my head. And slowly, as he kept coming back, I'm sure there was times if I actually had ice, like, not everything is controllable where, it's always in your control. Maybe he's having a really good game also, and that's just uncontrollable. But if you had ice, should be able to reset the momentum that other people are getting. You should be able to put your mind back into a healthy headspace, a competitive mindset, and enable you to close out those kinds of close games. And that just didn't happen in that match. I let his momentum build, and I just kept losing matches, and I got more frustrated. I got more frustrated because I thought I could do it, and I wasn't doing it. And I was telling myself, why am I not doing this? I can beat this guy. I've been beating this guy in the first set, but now I can't do it. What is happening? Where did all of my ice go? And at the end, when I lost the match, that was when I realized, in the grand context of sports and in gaming, I really have low ice. I don't have that clutch factor that I thought I did. And it's really tough to know and to really come to terms with that, because not everyone can have that clutch factor. It's really about having a strong mental game and being able to pick yourself back up and understand that even if you're down right now, you're not fully out of it. And even now, at this point, I think I've reaffirmed to myself through different contexts, environments, that I don't have that mindset yet. I still let things get to my head so much. I let things dominate my thoughts when I should be able to compartmentalize and partition and be able to focus on things even when something else is stressing me. And I've been trying to take steps to get there, but it's still not quite there. I still don't have the ice yet.